breasts. You're a good man. A good man. A good man. A text yesterday from another of those women friends from college said, quote, Brett, be strong. Pulling for you to my core. A third text yesterday from yet another of those women I'm friends with from college said, I'm holding you in the light of God. As I said in my opening statement the last time I was with you, cherish your friends, look out for your friends, lift up your friends, love your friends. I felt that love more in the last 2 weeks than I ever had in my life. I thank all my friends. I love all my friends. Throughout my life, I've devoted huge efforts to encouraging and promoting the careers of women. I will put my record up against anyone's, male or female. I am proud of the letter from 84 women who worked with me at the Bush White House from 2001 to 2006 and described me as, quote, a man of the highest integrity. Read the op-ed from Sarah Day from Yarmouth, Maine. She worked in home office operations outside of President Bush's office. Here's what she recently wrote in centralmaine.com. Today she stands by her comments. Quote, Brett was an advocate for young women like me. He encouraged me to take on more responsibility to feel confident in my role. In fact, during the 2004 Republican National Convention, Brett gave me the opportunity to help with the preparation and review of the president's remarks. Something I never would have had the chance to do if he had not included me. And he didn't just include me in the work. He made sure I was at Madison Square Garden to watch the president's speech instead of back at the hotel watching on TV. End quote. As a judge since 2006, I've had the privilege of hiring 4 recent law school graduates to serve as my law clerks each year. The law clerks for federal judges are the best and brightest graduates of American law schools. They work for 1-year terms for judges after law school, and then they move on in their careers. For judges, training these young lawyers is an important responsibility. The clerks will become the next generation of American lawyers and leaders, judges and senators. Just after I took the bench in 2006, there was a major New York Times story about the low numbers of women law clerks at the Supreme Court and federal appeals courts. I took notice and I took action. A majority of my 48 law clerks over the last 12 years have been women. In a letter to this committee, my women law clerks said I was one of the strongest advocates in the federal judiciary for women lawyers. And they wrote that the legal profession is fairer and more equal because of me. In my time on the bench, no federal judge, not a single one in the country, has sent more women law clerks to clerk on the Supreme Court than I have. Before this allegation arose 2 weeks ago, I was required to start making certain administrative preparations for my possible transfer to the Supreme Court, just in case I was confirmed. As part of that, I had to, in essence, contingently hire a first group of 4 law clerks who could be available to clerk at the Supreme Court for me on a moment's notice. I did so, and contingently hired 4 law clerks. All 4 are women. If confirmed, I'll be the first justice in the history of the Supreme Court to have a group of all women law clerks. That is who I was. Over the past 12 years, I've taught constitutional law to hundreds of students, primarily at Harvard Law School, while I was hired by then Dean and now Justice Elena Kagan. One of my former women students, a Democrat, testified to this committee that I was an even-handed professor who treats people fairly and with respect. In a letter to this committee, my former students, male and female alike, wrote that I displayed a character that impressed us all. I love teaching law, but thanks to what some of you on this side of the committee have unleashed, I may never be able to teach again. For the past 7 years, I've coached my two daughters' basketball teams. You saw many of those girls when they came to my hearing for a couple of hours. You love a letter from the parents of the girls I coach that describe my dedication, commitment, and character. I coach because I know that a girl's confidence on the basketball court translates into confidence in other aspects of life. I love coaching more than anything I've ever done in my whole life. But thanks to what some of you on this side of the committee have unleashed, I may never be able to coach again. I've been a judge for 12 years. I have a long record of service to America and to the Constitution. I review the Constitution. I am deeply grateful to President Trump for nominating me. He was so gracious to my family and me on the July night he announced my nomination at the White House. I thank him for his steadfast support. When I accepted the President's nomination, Ashley and I knew this process would be challenging. We never expected that it would devolve into this. Explaining this to our daughters has been about the worst experience of our lives. Ashley has been a rock. I thank God every day for Ashley and my family. We live in a country devoted to due process and the rule of law. That means taking allegations seriously. But if the mere allegation, mere assertion of an allegation, a refuted allegation from 36 years ago, is enough to destroy a person's life and career, we will have abandoned the basic principles of fairness and due process that define our legal system and our country. I ask you to judge me by the standard that you would want applied to your father, your husband, your brother, or your son. My family and I intend no ill will toward Dr. Ford or her family. But I swear today, under oath, before the Senate and the nation, before my family and God, I am innocent of this charge.
Thank you, Judge Kavanaugh. Before we start questions, I won't repeat what I said this morning, but we'll do it the same way as we did for Dr. Ford, and 5-minute rounds. And so we will start with Ms. Mitchell.
Good afternoon, Judge Kavanaugh. We have not met. My name is Rachel Mitchell. I'd like to go over a couple of guidelines for our question and answer session today. If I ask a question...
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay. If I ask a question that you do not understand, please ask me to clarify it or ask it in a different way. I may ask a question where I incorporate some information you've already provided. If I get it wrong, please correct me. I'm not going to ask you to guess. If you do estimate, please let me know you're estimating. Now, I want to make sure that all of the committee members have gotten a copy of the definition of sexual behavior.
Yes, at least I have one.
Okay. And you have that as well, Judge Kavanaugh?
Yeah.
First of all, have you been given or reviewed a copy of the questions that I will be asking you?
No.
Has anyone told you the questions that I will be asking you?
No.
I want you to take a moment to review the definition that's before you of sexual behavior. Have you had a chance to review it?
I have. I may refer back to it if I can.
Yes, please. I'd like to point out two specific parts. Among the examples of sexual behavior, it includes rubbing or grinding your genitals against somebody, clothed or unclothed. And I would also point out that the definition applies whether or not the acts were sexually motivated, or, for example, horseplay. Do you understand the definition I've given you?
I do.
And again, if at any time you need to review that, please let me know. Dr. Ford has stated that somewhere between 5 or 6 people were present at the gathering on this date. You, Mark Judge, Leland Ingham at the time, or Leland Kaiser now, Patrick P.J. Smith, Dr. Ford, and an unnamed boy. Do you know Mark Judge?
I do.
How do you know him?
He was a friend at Georgetown Prep starting in 9th grade. He's someone we, in our, group of friends, we're a very friendly group in class. You saw the letter that's been sent by my friends from Georgetown Prep. Funny guy, great writer, popular, developed a serious addiction problem that lasted decades, near death a couple times from his addiction. Suffered tremendously from.
What is your relationship with him like now?
I haven't talked to him in a couple of years. We've probably been on, mass emails or group emails that go around my high school friends.
And how did you know Patrick Smith?
Also 9th grade, Georgetown Prep, worked by PJ. He and I lived close to one another. Played football together. He was defensive tackle. I was the cornerback, wide receiver. We carpooled to school along with D. Negus every year, the three of us for 2 years. I didn't have a car, so one of the two of them would drive every day. I'd be in there, they'd pick me up.
What's your relationship like with him now?
He lives in the area. I see him once in a while. I haven't seen him since this summer.
Do you know Leland Ingham or Leland Kaiser?
I know of her. It's possible I saw her and met her in high school at some point. Some of them, I know her. I know of her. And again, I don't want to rule out having crossed paths with her in high school.
Similar to your statements about knowing Dr. Ford?
Correct.
Senator Feinstein.
Why aren't you also asking the FBI to investigate these claims?
Senator, I'll do whatever the committee wants. I wanted a hearing the day after the allegation came up. I wanted to be here that day. Instead, 10 days passed where all this nonsense.
This is your dog. He needs a walk while you're out with friends today. That's where WAG comes in. WAG lets you book a dog walker whenever you need. This is Antonio. He's great with dogs.
I've been walking dogs for 2 years now.
Plus, he's been vetted by WAG, who knows his stuff.
Meeting a new dog, I always make sure they walk up to me first.
Antonio knows how to give your dog a great walk, and he fills you in on all the details. That's why you use WAG, because of great walkers like Antonio. Get your first walk free when you download the app now.
I'm all in immediately. I'm all in immediately.
And the terrible and hard part of this is, when we get an allegation, we're not in a position to prove it or disprove it. Therefore, we have to depend on some outside authority for it. And it just seemed to me that when these allegations came forward, that you would want the FBI to investigate those claims and clear it up once and for all.
Senator, the committee investigates that. It's not for me to say how to do it, but just so you know, the FBI doesn't reach a conclusion. They would give you a couple 302s that just tell you what we said. So I'm here. I wanted to be here. I wanted to be here the next day. It's an outrage that I was not allowed to come and immediately defend my name and say, I didn't do this, and give you all this evidence. I'm not even in D.C. on the weekends in the summer of 1982. This happened on a weekday? Well, is it, I'm not in a Blair high school for a summer league game. I'm not in Tony's house working out. I'm not in a movie with Suzanne. You know, I wanted to be here right away.
The difficult thing is that these hearings are set by the majority. But I'm talking about getting the evidence and having the evidence looked at. And I don't understand, you know, we hear from the witnesses, but the FBI isn't interviewing them and isn't giving us any facts. So all we have.
You're interviewing me. You're interviewing me. You're doing it, Senator. I'm sorry to interrupt, but you're doing it. There's no conclusions reached.
And what you're saying, if I understand it, is that the allegations by Dr. Ford, Ms. Ramirez, and Ms. Sweatley are wrong.
Yeah, that is emphatically what I'm saying. Emphatically. The Sweatley thing is a joke. That is a farce.
Would you like to say more about it? That's it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Dr. Ford has described you as being intoxicated at a party. Did you consume alcohol during your high school years?
Yes, we drank beer. My friends and I, the boys and girls. Yes, we drank beer. I like
This
beer.
one says, I want to be
Still
totally
like
when I
beer.
grow up.
We drank beer.
Still true.
Drinking age was like
So if
19,
throw out
18,
support
so
me,
the
I'll
seniors
throw out.
were legal. Senior year in high school, people were legal to drink, and we drank beer. And I said sometimes probably had too many beers, and sometimes other people had too many beers.
What
We drank beer. We liked beer.
do you consider to be too many
He's
beers?
straight appealing to that white redneck base. We drink beer, we like beer.
You know, whatever.
The motherfuckers could probably done went through 2 6-packs already. And it's not even 9 o'clock in the morning yet.
When you
Nah, it's actually afternoon time.
You said that
I was just
there
fucking
were
with
times in high school when people might.
Let me leave my rednecks alone.
On occasion. Does that include you?
What up, Billy Bob?
Have you ever passed out from drinking?
Passed out? No, but I'm
Yes, he has. Yes, he has. He lied like shit.
That's That's,
Yes, he
that's
has.
the allegation. That's wrong.
So let's talk about your time in high school. In high school, after drinking, did you ever wake up in a different location than you remembered passing out or going to sleep?
No.
Did you ever wake up with your clothes in a different condition or fewer clothes on than you remembered when you went to sleep or passed out?
See, he's about to say no.
No.
Now that's a lie.
Did you ever tell
That's a lie.
Did anyone ever tell you about something that happened in your that you didn't remember?
And the reason that is a lie.
No. We drank beer, and so did I think the vast majority of people our age at the time. But in any event, we drank beer and still do. So whatever. Yeah.
During the time in high school when you would be drinking, did anyone ever tell you about something that you did not remember?
No.
Dr. Ford described
If he said earlier it was an animal house culture,
home in the summer of 1982.
and you never blanked out or passed out
PJ Smith
from a kegger? Come on, bro, you lying. You could at least admit it, say yes, but not at that time. But he couldn't do that because his defense team probably told him he had to get a defense PR team. His defense team probably told him that if you say that, then you've opened yourself to the possibility of that night in question. It could have been one of those nights that you blanked out. I get it. You couldn't say that. But honestly, you've blanked. It has happened to even non-beer drinkers. It's even happened to wine drinkers. You can pass out off a wine too. I'm just saying.
Covered her mouth with your hand. Have you ever covered Dr. Ford's mouth with your hand?
No.
Dr. Ford described an incident where you tried to remove her clothes. Have you ever tried to remove her clothes?
No.
Referring back to the definition of
She should have asked him what color bathing suits did she have on.
Have you ever
He would have probably said no, but he would have probably been shocked for a second. He would have had that look like,
sexual behavior with Dr. Ford?
No.
Have you ever engaged in sexual behavior with Dr. Ford, even if it was consensual?
No.
I want to talk about your calendars. You submitted to the committee copies of the handwritten calendars that you've talked about for the months of May, June, July, and August of 1982. Do you have them in front of you?
I do.
Did you create these calendars in the sense of all the handwriting that's on them?
Yes.
Is it exclusively your handwriting?
Yes.
When did you make these entries?
In 1982.
Has anything been changed for those since 1982?
No.
Do these calendars represent your plans for each day, or do they document, in other words, prospectively, or do they document what actually occurred, more like a diary?
They're both forward-looking and backward-looking, as you can tell by looking at them, because I cross out certain doctor's appointments that didn't happen, or one night where I was supposed to lift weights, I crossed that out because I obviously didn't make it that night. So you can see the things that I didn't do crossed out in retrospect, and also when I list the specific people who I was with, that is likely backward-looking.
You explained that you kept these calendars because your father started keeping them in 1978, I believe you said. That's why you kept them. In other words, you wrote on them, but why did you keep them up until this time?
Well, he's kept them too since 1978, so he's a good role model.
Oh, I'm sorry.
he had to do that. He had to do that on the father angle. He had to do that, you know what I mean? And rightly so.
Defending himself forcefully in an opening statement that at times turned very emotional. First, very indignant, saying that this process was a national disgrace, said that his family and his reputation had been destroyed by false.
Brett Breyer is being honest.
Turning very emotional as he talked.
It's so funny. His name is Brett, and the guy being confirmed or trying to be confirmed is Brett.
Reflections on friends who have stood up for him.
I'm not trying to hear his analysis.
Gather himself for some time as he started talking about it.
I mean, anybody who was watching to see if he was going to come out guns blazing sat down. He was angry. You could tell his face was very stern the second he sat down, and he laid into.
I don't care who you have picked.
You know, he said she does not know me when he talked about this woman going to stand up for the story of Christy Blasey Ford. But then, as you say, Brett, it became very emotional, and it's very clear that all of this has taken a huge toll on him. He talked about his family being destroyed by this and how we knew it was going to be tough going in, but we never anticipated this. And he really called out the ugliness of the entire process and also his fears. For the
Fox News is awesome as fuck, yo.
touched on watching this process.
They got a woman making the man look like a victim against another woman. You gotta love him, yo. You gotta love him. Their sense of packaging propaganda and speaking to the worst part of people's minds is beautifully laid out. Like,
Absolutely, yes. He talked about that this confirmation process, as you mentioned, is a national disgrace. You've replaced advise and consent with.
Chris Wallace, little dumbass. Alright, back to Journey into Self by Julius Thomas, former wide receiver for the Denver Broncos. He said, I did this by reading and studying from the best minds of our time and the past. Socrates, Eckhart Tolle, Aquinas, Brené Brown, George Mumford. Yo, if you're an athlete, if you're a Laker not named LeBron James, because I'm sure LeBron James has read George Mumford's works, please read anything by George Mumford. Anything by him or about him, please, just read it. You know what I mean? Just anything by him. But I'm sorry, guys, I digress. Brené Brown, George Mumford, David Hawkins, Dr. King, etc. Although I am and always will be an athlete, there were other parts of me that were being suppressed. Interests, relationships, meaning. I had to learn to accept that my identity was not my profession. Actually, there were a lot more facets to what makes me that I had never fully embraced or explored. But by doing so, I was able to become a fuller version of myself. Through my journey, I was able to see the importance of love and compassion and the benefits of peeling back our masks. I became aware of how much others can benefit from this experience as well. And that's a big part of why I've decided to go back to school. Bullet 1. While making the decision to no longer play the game is difficult, I'm also incredibly excited about what's next. Studying therapy and becoming well trained in it so that I can help people heal from their emotional and mental pain. Bullet 2. Investigating the effects of combat sports on brain trauma and neurobehavioral performance. Bullet 3. Participating in research looking at biomarkers that may identify early warnings of brain disease. These are the things I'll be learning and working on over the next year as I begin to pursue a doctorate in psychology. There was no one moment when I concluded, man, I want to be a psychologist. Honestly, if you asked me 10 years ago, I would have said psychology was dumb and psychologists couldn't tell me anything about who I am. I didn't believe in the idea of another person informing me about the way my mind worked or asking me to explore my emotions. I ran from feelings like I'm sure most of us do. But in my own existential search for meaning, I started finding myself more drawn to the field. It's hard to pinpoint when it happened exactly, but I think it was sparked when I evaluated my own life and realized that it was a self-study of mindfulness and psychological principles that was allowing me to move through my own struggles. These material things I was focused on, the cars, the homes, the paycheck, I finally had them, but something was still missing. When I was when I was deeply honest with myself, it was clear those things didn't make me happy. The most moving realization was that as my awareness grew, I became more tuned into my surroundings. As I sat in team meetings, locker rooms, dinners, and other gatherings with my peers, it struck me that under the surface, many of them must be dealing with their own existential difficulties. That beneath their hardened exteriors, at least some of them were hurting. In every professional sport, but particularly football, men aren't given permission to share what they feel inside. It's our culture, our profession that expects us to be above what it means to be human. We're required to give everything of ourselves, and somehow, because of our position in life, nothing is supposed to bother us. The brave faces we put on our losses, whether they're relatively trivial losses like games, or more profound ones such as marriages or family members, are not always indicative of how we feel inside. There's a lot of pain that remains hidden. I started thinking more about how, as teammates, we'll pack closely together in the huddle or meeting room and say that we love each other, that we will sacrifice ourselves again and again to see our brothers have success on the field. The compassion that was growing within me made me believe the way we sacrifice for each other should continue beyond that, outside of the playing field or practice facility, because fellow players understand the external and internal pressures of this life better than anybody else. You get rewarded handsomely for being a professional athlete, but part of the trade-off is that everything about you is public. Your salary, your personal life, your mistakes and successes, the intensity with which you are celebrated for playing well, inversely applies to the criticism you receive. Your failures are remembered in the same breath as your successes. You're constantly reminded by everyone. Let me remind you that Ben Roethlisberger raped 2 women and got away with it, and still playing in the NFL. I'm sorry, Ben. I got to do it. You know what I mean? I'm sorry. I got to be the black racist in this context. You know what I mean? I know most of y'all Trumpian whites are thinking I'm a black racist. I got to be there in this context. Let me go back to Julius Thomas. Julius Thomas did not say anything about Ben Roethlisberger. That was my opinion. I'm sorry, Big Ben. You're constantly reminded by everyone around you that you're living a dream. So when you realize something isn't right deep down, you keep that inside rather than trying to evaluate it. Who do you call? How many people truly know that money isn't some great panache for emotional pain? Panache. Let me stop. Carlton, Alfonso Ribeiro, Carlton from Fresh Prince. If it wasn't for you, I'd have never knew what that word was beyond the age of 13. No, let me be specific, beyond the age of 14 and a half. If it wasn't for you saying panache, I would have never gotten that word, but I digress. Who do you call? How many people truly know that money isn't some great panache for emotional pain? You internalize that fear and anxiety and just work harder, believing that winning or money will make whatever you're feeling go away. You discount your own internal struggle because you believe it's not as bad as what others experience. But ultimately, that's not the point. It's not about comparison. Pain is pain, struggle is struggle. We all experience suffering on our own individual levels that can be quantified. As easy as it was to fall in love with this game, it was just as easy to get frustrated by it too. At various times, football has flummoxed me, pissed me off, caused me to lose sleep, you name it. There is also beauty in the struggle. Because of the difficulties of being a pro, I had to push beyond what I thought were my limits. Thinking about it, I wouldn't change any of it. It was that exact combination of experience that has made me into who I am today. And for that, I could not be more thankful. Because of football, I was loved, supported, and encouraged by so many people from all different walks of life. I got to experience some of the most amazing moments on some of the biggest stages imaginable. For that, I'm deeply thankful to the fans, coaches, organizations, and teammates who have taken this journey with me. I simply wouldn't be where I am today without you all. I tried to give you everything I had, and your love, support, interest, and passion was instrumental in who I am. Thank you. When I reflect on the moments that have had a lasting impact on me, and I've been doing that quite a bit, I realize one of the most impactful occurs within me, even registering it at the time. My fourth year in the league, while I was with the Broncos, I was in the locker room talking with my teammate Jacob Tammy. He's a guy that I have a ton of respect for as a teammate, but even more so as a man. At some point, he sat down next to me unprompted and told me, Julius, I want you to know that you can have a great impact on the men in this locker room, that people listen to you, and you could do a lot for the guys here by leading. It caught me off guard because that was one of the last things I was thinking about at that time in my life, enough so that I still remember it vividly. Honestly, I was a lot more focused on myself than on the people around me. I was trying to climb this ladder to success. That was all that really mattered. But it turned out what he said planted a seed that began to grow. A few years later, in my second season with the Jags, we played a game against Atlanta, who Jacob played for at the time. In the time between what he told me in Denver in that moment, I'd grown a lot and thought a lot more about what he said to me that day. And I did what I should have done at the time but wasn't ready to. I thank him for providing me that guidance. He ended up giving me the message that I needed to hear at that exact moment in my life I needed to hear, even if I hadn't known it at the time. When I started thinking about how I can best serve others, one thing that occurred to me was, man, I didn't really have anybody I could call and talk to about my life who I thought would really understand. Someone who could understand on an experiential level. That beyond the paycheck, the physical toll this game takes on your body and the mental toll of how uncertain your future is can cause a ton of anxiety. And then it became clearer to me that my purpose was to try to become that person for others. And that's what's inspired me for what I'm doing now.
Monday night when Martha interviewed him, I'm going to suggest that held him back.
Judge Napolitano is an ass. It's a tool. I'm sorry. I just heard a racist voice on Fox. Back to Julius Thomas real quick. He goes on to write, I began auditing psychology classes during the off-season to see if it did in fact interest me. It turned out being in those classes made me feel fulfilled in a way I hadn't in some time. Did it all make sense to me right away? No, of course not. But once again, I felt that subtle calling, that soft ring inside telling me to follow my heart. The desire was born to take studying psychology as far as I could. And even if I did have a lot to learn, even if I did have And even if I did have a lot to learn, it didn't take long for me to find some direction. As I started meeting some people in the field of psychology, the topic of brain injuries came up in conversation again and again. Because of my football career, CT became a pretty frequent topic of conversation. Truthfully, it wasn't something openly discussed a lot while I was playing. There were offhand references, but for the most part, it was something we knew we were at risk for, but had no idea what the risk really was. That surprised a lot of people I spoke with, and what I quickly discovered is that there was a ton of brain trauma research that I was completely unaware of, but also a ton of research that still needed to be conducted. In those moments, I started to feel aligned, to feel a sort of calling to study brain trauma. It just sort of fit. I knew I wanted to help and knew that this would be a great way to help football players, to be that person who could help them understand what we all are at risk of. I felt inside that this was stuff I needed to understand. and then it all came together. Football has serious cognitive risks, but there's still a lot to learn about the extent of them and ways they can be mitigated. The ability to assist with the latest research being done on brain trauma and the pursuits to better understand CTE, to study it not just from the perspective of a psychologist or clinician, but also as a person who has played for several years at the highest level, is something that excites me. It fills me with a sense of purpose. It's a way to help while growing intellectually that I had been searching for. I know I have so much to learn, but that's what I'm most looking forward to. I understand why it took me some time to actually overcome the fear of looking into the deepest parts of who I was. Sometimes in order to follow your heart, you have to quiet your mind, because your mind, your ego, constructs an identity for you, and then you put a lot of energy into living up to that identity. Nothing seems more counterproductive than stepping out of a persona you spent your whole life building. But this is exactly the work that must be done to fully step into all of who you are. I'm ready to admit that I'm okay with giving up the identity of Julius the football player. I'm okay with not being recognized as an NFL athlete, because I'm more than that. I have stepped out of my identity before, and I will continue to do it again and again throughout life. I believe helping others is what I'm supposed to be doing at this point in my life. Hopefully, I can help by encouraging more of my peers to connect with who they are outside of the game. If ultimately that's what I'm remembered for, I'd be very thankful, because this is the thing I want to do most in the world, and now I'm going to give it all of myself to. Above all else, love. That was awesome. I'm sorry. My man Brett is back. Hey, I read that Julius Thomas piece because this brother going back to school to get his PhD. He's probably made about $30 million in paycheck, in pay from NFL teams in his career, you know what I mean? So, which is awesome, you know what I mean? Like, if you made $30 million in your lifetime, you shouldn't be broke, you know what I mean? Your kids and your grandkids shouldn't be broke. You should have started creating that wealth with that much money. But my point was this. Yeah, I remember the first game of the season. Who was it? The Eagles and who else? Who did the Eagles play? I don't remember who they played, but the score was like 18-12, right? When was the last time there's been a score like that in the NFL? It's just so funny that the score was 18-12 and the war of 18-12. You know what I mean? Francis Kaki, the national anthem. Oh, say can, all that. It's awesome.
Weeks ago, and nothing was done with it by the ranking member, and it sprung on me.
Judge Kavanaugh, I've heard your
Yo, Patrick Leahy is old. That man been at it too damn long.
Let me ask you this. He authored a book titled Wasted Tales of a Gen X Drunk. He references a particle of Kavanaugh vomiting in someone's car during beach week and then passing out. Is that you he's talking about?
Sir, Mark Judge was...
To your knowledge, is that you that he's talking about?
I'll explain it if you let me.
Proceed, please.
He said, I'll explain if you let me.
A friend of ours in high school who developed a very serious drinking problem, an addiction problem, that lasted decades and was very difficult for him to escape from.
And his family couldn't afford to send him to expensive rehab. Like, he didn't have affluenza like Kavanaugh did, you know what I mean? That's why he had to work as a bag boy.
And an account. I think he picked out names of friends of ours to throw them in as kind of close to what for characters in the book. So you know, we can sit here.
We don't know whether that's you or not.
We can sit here and you like make fun of some guy who has an addiction. I don't think that really is really.
Now he's trying to appeal to their whole he just gave Trump a talking point about the whole addiction thing. You know how the opioid addiction, which is an epidemic now, you know, because it's affecting spoiled white kids, spoiled white people, you know. It's an epidemic, but crack was a war on crack, war on drugs.
You talked about drinking and sexual exploits, did you not? Senator, let me take a step back and explain high school.
If you watch both of the testimonies from the victim, Miss Ford, and this guy, you see how simply she was answering her questions, how she wasn't being defensive. Like, now you notice that?
I busted my butt in academics. I always tried to do the best I could. So I recall I finished one in the class, freshman and junior year, right up at the top with Steve Clark and Eddie Ayala. We were always kind of in the mix. I played sports. I was captain of the varsity basketball team. I was wide receiver and defensive back on the football team. I ran track in the spring of '82 to try to get faster. I did my service projects at the school, which involved going to the soup kitchen downtown, let me finish, and going to tutor intellectually disabled kids at the Rockville Library. Went to church.
The sad thing about it is, they're gonna confirm this guy as fucking Supreme Court Justice, yo. They're gonna confirm him. That's the sad part. Like, that's the sad part.
Does it reflect your focus? I already said the yearbook in my opening statement. The yearbook is obviously...
Just wait a minute. He's asked the question. I'll give you time to answer it.
The yearbook, as I said in my opening statement, was something where the students and editors made a decision to treat some of it as farce and some of it as exaggeration, some of it celebrating things that don't reflect the things that were really the central part of our school. Yes, we went to parties, though. Yes, of course, we went to parties, and the yearbook page describes that and kind of makes fun of it. And as a, you know, if we want to sit here and talk about whether a Supreme Court nomination should be based on a high school yearbook page, I think that's taken us to a new
No,
level.
a Supreme Court nomination is based on character. And part of high school is what makes you who you are. Look at Stephen Miller.
Judge, do you still have your...
Go read some of the things Stephen Miller wrote. Go look at some of the videos of what he did in high school
first entry.
in Santa Monica and what he's saying and doing now.
Yes.
The entry says, and I quote, "Go to Timmy's for skis with Judge, Tom, PJ, Bernie, and Squeak."
Squeak.
What
That's a nickname.
Okay. To what does this refer and to whom?
So, first says Tobin's House workout. So that's one of the football workouts that we would have, that Dr. Finizio would run for guys on the football team during the summer. So we would be there. That's usually 6 to 8 or so, kind of till near dark. And then it looks like we went over to Timmy's. You want to know their last names too? I'm happy to do it.
If you could just identify, is Judge, Mark Judge,
It is.
and is PJ Smith?
It is. So it's Tim Garnett, Mark Judge, Tom Kane, PJ Smith, Bernie McCarthy, Chris Garrett.
Chris Garrett is Squeak.
He is.
Did you, in your calendar, routinely document social gatherings like house parties or
He's good.
gatherings of friends in your calendar?
He's about to say no.
Yes. It certainly appears that way. That's what I was doing in the summer of 1982, and you can see that reflected on
So why didn't
several
you?
of the entries.
So why didn't you record
Gathering like
the
Dr.
gathering
Ford has described
with the
occurred,
rape?
Would you have documented that?
Yes, because I documented everything, those kinds of events, even small get-togethers. August 7th is another good example where I documented a small get-together that summer, so yes.
That's why this white boy came out with journals. How many 15-year-old white boys y'all know keep journals? Y'all don't keep journals. Y'all really are sisters' journals.
Matt, Denise, Lori, Jenny.
Have you reviewed every entry that is in these calendars of May, June, July, and August of 1982?
I have.
Is there anything that could even remotely fit what we're talking about in terms of Dr. Ford's allegations?
No.
As a lawyer and a judge, we've talked about the FBI, are you aware that this type of offense would actually be investigated by local police?
Yes, I mentioned Montgomery County Police earlier, yes.
Are you aware that in Maryland, there is no statute of limitations that would prohibit you being charged, even if this happened in 1982?
That's my understanding.
Ooh.
Have you at any time been contacted by
Governor Ben Hogan. Come on now.
local police agencies regarding this matter?
Have your Justice Department, have your prosecutor's office look into this matter, man. Come on now.
Nomination for Supreme Court, you talked about all of the female clerks you've had and the women that you've worked with. I'm not just talking about them. I'm talking about globally. Have you ever been accused, either formally or informally, of unwanted sexual behavior?
No.
And when I say informally, I mean just a female
Did you
complaint.
think he
It
was
doesn't
gonna
have to
say
be to
yes?
anybody else but you.
No.
Since Dr. Ford's allegation was made public, how many times have you been interviewed by the committee?
It's been 3 or 4. I'm trying to remember now. It's been several times. Each of these new things, absurd as they are, would get on the phone and kind of go through them.
So have you submitted 2 interviews specifically about Dr. Ford's allegation?
Yes.
And what about Deborah Ramirez's allegation that
Yes.
you waved your penis in front of her?
Yes.
What about Julie Swetnick's allegation that you repeatedly engaged in drugging and gang raping or allowing women to be gang raped?
Hey, yo, in the spirit of transparency and openness, I did that one time to Aisha. It was me, Aisha, and Yakub chilling. We was in the woods and shit, you know what I mean? We was in the hood, we was behind on your couch and over there chilling and shit, you know what I mean? And took my shit out and that nigga went flat real quick, went flashing real quick, you know what I mean? Put that nigga right back inside. Like, nah. But if they find out who I'm talking about, they actually she admit to it, you know what I mean? I'm just saying. That's the only time I don't remember ever doing that shit in my life like that.
You have clearly and unequivocally
You know.
denied that you assaulted Dr. Ford.
Like I said, men of shits, we all pieces of shit. You know what I mean? It just comes down to our genetic predisposition to want to control that sleazeball, that trumpery. We can't even call nobody a sleazeball no more. Anybody who's a sleazeball, just call him a trumpite.
And in the course of it, you said,
Trumpite. TRUMPITE.
I quote you, I welcome
Trumpite.
any kind of investigation.
There you go. Did I get that right?
For you. Right now, turn to your left in the front row. To Don McGahn, counsel to President Donald Trump. Ask him to suspend this hearing and nomination process until the FBI completes its investigation of the charges made by Dr. Ford and others, and goes to bring the witnesses forward and provides that information to this hearing. Well, I'm sure that the chairman at that point will understand that that is a reasonable request to finally put to rest
I like
charges
that.
if they are false, or to prove them if they are not. You spent 2 years in the White House office that approved judicial nominees. You turned to the FBI over and over and over again for their work. Let's bring them in here and now. Turn to Don McGahn and tell him it's time to get this done. An FBI investigation is the only way to answer some of these questions.
So
Stop the clock. This committee is running this hearing.
He
Not
just
the
got
White House,
rattled.
not Don McGahn, not even you as a nominee. We are here today.
At least $7 again in San Francisco.
Opportunity here.
She's like, oh shit. I'm witnessing history here.
We're here because people wanted to be heard from charges that they all thought
My
were
man got
unfair,
extra thirsty
or
real
activities like sexual assault was unfair. So I want to assure Senator Durbin, regardless of what you say to Senator Don McGahn, we're not suspending this hearing. Proceed to answer the question, or whatever, or if the gentleman,
If you, Judge Kavanaugh, turn to Stan McGahn
Yo.
and to this committee and say, for the sake of my reputation, my family name, and to get to the bottom of the truth of this, I am not going to be an obstacle to an FBI investigation. I would hope that all the members of the committee would join me in saying we're going to abide by your wishes and we will have that investigation.
I welcome whatever the committee wants to do because I'm telling the truth.
I want to know what you want to do.
I'm telling the
I
truth.
want to know what you want to do.
I'm innocent. I'm innocent of this charge.
And you're prepared for an FBI
They
investigation?
don't reach conclusions. You reach the conclusion.
No, but they do investigate questions.
I'm
And you
innocent.
can't have it both ways, Judge. You can't say here at the beginning,
I want to
at your
hear.
moment, I welcome any kind of investigation.
This thing was
and
sprung on me.
this.
This thing was sprung at the last minute after being held by staff. You know,
Judge,
and I called for a
What's that got to do with
there's
anything?
no truth to her charges. The FBI investigation will show that.
Thank you.
Are you afraid that they might not?
come on, say your
The
will.
FBI does not reach. You know that's a phony question.
Now he about to blame the FBI.
Conclusions. They just provide the 302s. With 302s, so I can explain to people who don't know what that is. They just go and do what you're doing, ask questions, and then type up a report. They don't reach the bottom line conclusion.
Okay, then the world is gonna get the report when the FBI finds out.
And she said, sure, I remember. 6 or 8 weeks after this.
Shut your dumb ass up trying to fool people.
The Washington Post went in and took a look at Mr. Judge's book and has been able to, the run that he wrote about his addiction and his alcoholism. And they have narrowed it down what they think was a period of time, 6 or 8 weeks after the event. And he would have been working at the Safeway at that point. So the point I'm getting to is we at least can connect some dots here and get some information. Why would you resist?
That man book must be selling right now.
Why would you resist that kind of investigation?
Let me try to find that book. Let me try to find that book.
I'm asking about the FBI
Let me
investigation.
try to find that book.
Figures out how to ask the questions.
Mark David book. Not Mark David Duke, just Mark David.
Judge Kavanaugh, will you support an FBI investigation right now?
I will do whatever the committee wants to.
Personally, do you think that's the best thing for us to do? You won't answer?
Look, Senator.
Your man stuck.
I
Your
said
man got
at the hearing, I said I was welcome anything. I'm innocent. This thing was held when it could have been presented in the ordinary way. It could have been held and handled confidentially at first, which was what Dr. Ford's wishes were, as I understand it. It wouldn't have caused this, like, destroyed my family like this effort has.
I think an FBI investigation will help all of us on both sides of the issue.
I think so too, Senator Durbin.
Senator Graham asked for the floor.
I think so too, Senator Durbin.
It
I
seems
think
to
so
me
too, Senator Durbin.
That